Hello, everybody. I'm Robbie Swale, and I'm a leadership coach, and I'm the founder and creator of The Coach's Journey, which you can find out more about at thecoachesjourney.com. Lots of resources for coaches aimed to help coaches create thriving businesses, thrive as people while they do it, including a podcast with about 60 episodes as we're recording this. And what you're going to see today is an example of the group coaching sessions that I run as part of the Coach's Journey community, which is my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches. If you want to get to the coaching bit, you can skip forward a few minutes because what I'm going to do first is say a little bit about why we're doing this, what the contract that me and these fantastic people who you can see on your screen have between us. And then we'll move into what is normally a coach's journey, how a coach's journey call normally runs. So the things to say really, there are a couple of reasons why I've had this in mind to do for a long time. Some is that people have suggested it for various reasons, but I've had this, this has been in me since about 2017 or 18, which is when I last recorded group coaching session to share on YouTube. So you can go and find that. And it has, for me, quite a lot of views, that in the thousands. And I think that's partly because there just aren't very many examples of group coaching available on the internet. And so I know, for example, that that video gets used as part of a training course for coaches because it's an example, one of the few, of group coaching. The other reason is that, one of the things I believe about coaching is it's quite hard to explain like what it actually is. And for people who haven't done group coaching before, it's quite hard to know if the Coach's Journey community or another group coaching thing is the right thing for them. And the best way is to experience it. And the good thing about the Coach's Journey community is people can come along to some of the calls every year for a really small fee to experience it. But this gives people a way to get a feel for what those calls are actually like before they show up. That's another reason. And the last reason, I guess, is that these kinds of videos have the possibility to create insight for the people watching. And that's one of the reasons that I love working in groups and being a part of groups, especially when they are run in this kind of way, because you get so much opportunity to learn. There's an opportunity to learn when you're being coached. There's an opportunity to learn from what I'm doing, and there's an opportunity to learn from the topics that other people are bringing. And there's so much in there, and from your own experience as we go through the call. And that's true for the four of you today and for me, but also for everybody watching. And I should say, both in the way that I'm coaching, what I usually say when I'm explaining the Coach's Journey to people, is that you might learn from what I'm doing. And that might be, you see something I do and you think it's great and you want to do it. Or it might be you see something I do and you think that's a really terrible thing to be doing. I'm never going to do it like that. And both of those are fantastic ways to learn. And one of the reasons that I have continually shared my work and my thinking about coaching, particularly, but also my other work, but here we're thinking about coaches, is to give coaches more choice. That felt like a really big move for me as I started my coaching business, learning from other people and getting that choice. I could do it like this. I could do it like that. What am I going to choose? I'm certainly not saying you have to do things how I do them or that I'm doing it right. And that's the thing to constantly play in. As you're watching, if you're watching, I'd invite you to bring curiosity. These things are shared in the spirit of generosity and learning. And the YouTube comments section it's not always a place of generosity and curiosity. So and if you want to know why I'm laughing and why maybe Alex is laughing, I don't know if Alex has looked at the comments on my previous group coaching call. Yeah, he's nodding, he has. But there's some really funny ones in there. And I say they're funny now, and they are funny to me now, but also it's a reminder, like, everyone who's making something is a person. So, you'll read my responses on there if you go and check it out now, and you'll see like what looks like the comments are responses from a centered human, which they were by the time that I wrote the responses. But it's not that fun to get people being mean to you on the internet. So whilst I'm a big boy and I'm doing this in full knowledge of what's happening, what I'd invite you to remember if you're watching this is you're probably watching this because you're interested in coaching, and bring a coaching spirit to the interactions. I love questions on the things that I've made, whether that's in the future, if this is shared on the podcast site or whether it's on YouTube. I'll look out for those comments and I'll reply. And I love learning together through that. But always want to invite that. Always want to invite the values of the Coach's Journey community, which we'll talk about shortly. So the last thing I'm going to say is I always get curious. This might be a weird thing about me. When I'm watching or hearing about a coaching session that's recorded, I always want to know, like, what was the situation in which this was recorded? Like, did the person know in advance, or did they okay it afterwards? Because I've thought a lot about sharing these kinds of things, and it's a kind of tricky thing. Like, I'm just going to turn my microphone around, team, because I'm getting this like little purple glare on my video, and it's from the light on my mic, which is really funny. So there's that. Yeah, I'm always interested. Like, did the client know ahead of time? Like, how did that work? And how do you set up a recording to be shared? So I want to say a tiny thing about that, and then we'll move into the community call, really. So basically, the Coaches Journey community at this moment, you know, the group coaching part of it is 10 calls a year, of which different members come to different numbers of those calls. And what I decided to do, I wanted to record one, but I didn't want to take away the value from or disrupt the value that anyone had paid for and signed up for. So this was offered to everyone who's a member of the Coaches Journey community at this time as a bonus call that anybody could come to, on the understanding that it would be shared on the internet. And that's what these 4 awesome, courageous people signed up for. And then we're gonna move into a Coach's Journey community call now and have this wonderful experiment together. And and you'll see, people will see how I run these group calls from now on. And usually there's we've got this today, I think, as well. Like, because the membership of the Coach's Journey is so flexible, we often end up with a group of people who have never been a group before, and that's true of this group. And this is almost the group of people, in fact, who were at the in-person Coach's Journey retreat in September 2023, but not quite. And it's almost a group that has been on a call, call before, but not quite. And so we got that. And so the first part of the calls is usually about creating insight together, but also connecting with each other. And then we step into what we might call the hallowed ground of coaching. So before we do that, and as a way for us 5 to bridge it, we're going to do a little bit of breathing. This is what we do at the start of almost every Coach's Journey community call. Yeah, people, again, take leadership of this in terms of how you want to do it. But I think we're going to do a really simple breathing exercise. I'm standing. I'm going to close my eyes. And if you're watching, you get a choice in this moment. You can skip through this bit, or you could take this as an invitation to slow down, which we could all usually do with a little more often. So take a moment, team, to just bring yourself into a physically centered position, which might be shoulders above hips, knees, if you're standing, knees not locked back, just forward a little, legs straight, weight spread roughly evenly between your feet. And then we're going to gently breathe out all the way, and then we're going to do the box breathing exercise. So we're going to breathe in over a count of 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. So gently breathe out all the way, and then breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. 2 more. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Last one. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. And just allow yourself to breathe normally. If you need to, if you feel it, have a little wiggle. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the call. Hazel's doing that stretch. I always do that. That's the one I find myself always doing in these moments when I slow down. So before we just step in, I just want to remind and invite everyone into those values that are my values really, but that years ago when I first started doing group calls, I decided I was going to introduce the start of those calls with those values, and it feels like it's been in service of creating a powerful learning environment ever since. So just an invitation today, perhaps particularly today, given that we're not going to talk about what we're doing that much, but we're present to the fact that this is a little more public than these calls normally are. Those values being courage. So just in those moments where you feel a little fear, just an invitation on these calls to lean into that fear a little more than you might in everyday life. Courage being acting in the face of fear. Vulnerability, a particular kind of courage, and maybe particularly, some people might really feel that today because we're doing a thing now, we're making a thing, and it's going to be public. And the thing that you four are doing is an incredibly courageous and generous thing to be doing, but it's also a vulnerable thing. It's one thing for me, and I should say that all the mean comments on YouTube on the last video I did were about me, none about the people, none about the clients. So you can be so there's a vulnerability to what I'm doing, but also to what you're doing, and honesty. So again, with the courage, with the vulnerability, with the honesty, if you get those moments, we get the choice. Am I going to be a little more honest than I usually would be, or a little less? The invitation from me is to be a little more than you normally would be. And lastly, most importantly, leadership. Always, whenever, whatever's going on in this call, take ownership of your own experience, find the ways to learn, and look after yourself, right? Care for yourself first. We're here in service, all four of you, of your growth, you as humans today. And so take leadership to make this the experience that will serve you, whatever that might be. And over whatever it is now, 4 years of the Coach's Journey community, we've had amazing acts of leadership in all kinds of ways, always of which I admire, usually of which is me inviting us to go one way and somebody saying, actually, a much better idea, much more in service of me is to do something completely different. So welcome all of that and encourage it. So as I was slowing down to think about this call and think about about those things really, and about what makes the community special before this call, one of the things, I noticed I was tempted to try to kind of pretend that we weren't recording in the call, and I caught that, and I was like, that's interesting, isn't it? And then I thought that's not quite it. So like I said before we switched on the recording to all of you, like, be here in service of yourselves, forget that we're recording. But what it called to me was this story from the fantasy novelist David Gemmell. Some of you know I have what some might call a mild obsession with David Gemmell. I would call an interest which has led me to probably be, if we think about how expertise is quantified, one of the UK's leading experts on David Gemmell, because I have put a strange amount of time into creating a website about him. The reason for that is there are many, for a slightly pulpy fantasy writer, there's an amazing amount of philosophy in his work. This is a really beautiful story from the book Waylander. I wrote about it recently, so some of you might have read it already. And the story, I'm going to tell it briefly, is something like this. Waylander is a kind of tortured soul, an assassin. People often say he would be played by Clint Eastwood out of the spaghetti westerns if a movie was being made. Lots of shades of grey. He steps in and I think slightly accidentally saves a woman and her children from some raiders by killing them all, because he's a fearsome warrior. And at the end of it, later, the woman, Daniel, asks him, like, how did you do that? And he explains it's about conquering fear, facing fear, using fear. And she asks him to teach her. And he throws a pebble to her. It's the nighttime. They're in the moonlight, and she catches it. She's a dexterous woman, and she easily catches it. He says, simple to catch, right? And she says yes. And he says, now imagine that your two daughters, there's men with knives at their throat, and if you don't catch the pebble, they'll be killed. And he says that the reason that he's able to be who he is because for him, catching a pebble is always a pebble. When he's fighting, he's always just he's able to focus on the little things because the big things aren't riding on him. And she asks him to teach her, and he says he doesn't have time, he can't do it. And she challenges him on that. So he says, okay, here we are. I will throw this pebble to you. If you catch it, then you can stay with me and I'll guide you to the city that she's trying to get to. If you don't catch it, I'll leave you in the forest. And we know, I think in the story, we know at this point there are raiders and, you know, other people in the forest, like the men he rescued her from. And she says, well, what if I don't agree to that? And he says, if you don't agree, I'll leave you alone anyway. So she agrees, and he throws the pebble to her, and it's a bad throw, and she has to kind of dive down to her right in the moonlight. She almost drops it. It bounces off her hand. She catches it at the second attempt and celebrates. And he says, why so happy? And she says, I won. And he says, no. She says, well, I beat you. And he says, no. And as he walks away, she says, Waylander, I got it. I solved the mystery. I caught a pebble in the moonlight. For me, this is like so much of what we do as we build coaching businesses, as we follow what the world is calling us to do. We do all these things that are just pebbles in the moonlight, and yet they take on far greater significance, which could be, for example, me coaching in front of an unnamed hundreds or thousands of people in this moment. And it could be the emails we send, which for some reason have our heart beating like something absolutely crazy is happening in our life. We're just catching pebbles in the moonlight. So I'm going to check in now. Each of you just sharing a reflection in this moment, an insight, something you're noticing. David.
Your story brings back a memory where I did almost exactly what you described. It wasn't in the moonlight. It was on a Saturday afternoon on a cricket field, and I dropped 2 catches. And I know exactly why I dropped them. It was because I was new to the team and I felt all eyes on me. The pressure, it wasn't just catching a ball. And a few days later in practice, I'd already made a determination, I'm not going to drop another ball. And strangely that night, like 3 or 4 balls, some of the hardest catches you could imagine, and I could feel the groans around my teammates. I was gone to him, he drops the ball. And I caught every one. And they were harder to catch than the ones in the match. But yeah, anyway, there's so much going on in your head, you know, depending on what you're focused on, and changes the outcome. So that's from like 30 years ago. But you just brought that up.
Yeah, sport is such a good analogy. You know, anyone who's interested in sport, it's like, it's full of those stories. And if you dig into the stories about the people who had the talent but couldn't clear their minds in the key moments. It reminds me, one of Miles Downey, who was a guest on a podcast, one of the things he says is, I think it's inspired by the inner game of tennis, which essentially is the same thing, is performance equals potential minus interference. And it's just like such a thing to think about. So performance equals potential minus interference. And all that stuff, when you're catching the pebble in the moonlight, you're catching the cricket ball as it comes towards you, all that thought, all that pressure doesn't help, right? In some ways.
Right. The inner game versus the outer game now.
Yeah. Joey, what's something you've noticed from the call so far?
In a teeny tiny way, we're kind of doing that here, aren't we? Usually in these calls, I'm more relaxed than I am now. There is like a whole little section here of my mind remembering that we might be watched by anyone, anywhere, no idea who, when, how, what they might be doing when they're watching, what they might be looking for. So yeah, I'm not just like chill as usual. I'm not totally in it actually as much as usual. Usually I'm really easily at ease and present and inside the conversation, whereas today I've got a little, apart from anything else, there's a lot of noise outside where I am, which isn't usually either, and also it wouldn't usually matter, but now it matters. So it's like, how will we be coachees, thinkers in this call when we have other little bits going off today, which isn't how it usually is? Yet we want to also represent, you know, how it usually is and focus on a coaching call and nothing else. And that's a funny kind of Just
Yeah.
for a moment, when I had to really think about your equation, I think I forgot and was like, oh, you know, the cogs are going. So it's, yeah, it's interesting, given the story you just told and then what you said, David, and yeah.
Yeah, it feels to me like, I mean, partly why I shared it is to remind me of all that, all of that, right, in this moment, but also to remind you. And again, it's an interesting thing because I have, I'm just noticing I have I'm putting our, we're putting our attention on that now, and that could raise the interference, and that's interesting. My intuition is better to know about that and really notice that little part of you, and then choose what to do with it, than to kind of just have this underlying sense of I'm not totally settled here without noticing what's going on. Hazel, what are you noticing in this moment?
My impatience to just get on with this call.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard of that story before. And it reminds me what I always tell my children. Remember that internal dialogue gets in the way of being totally present, and to catch it often. Not that they listen to me, of course.
Yeah. And just to mess a little bit, of course, you're worrying, you're thinking, your impatience, right, is also some kind of inner dialogue interference, right, away from presence. It's like it's so interesting. There's so much going on. Alex, how about you? What are you noticing?
I think for me, it was just something about the power of story. And I was reminded that recently I was reading one of my absolute favorite stories from childhood, which is A Little Princess. And a slightly random thing is that I kind of modeled and in some ways still model my behavior on the title character of that. Like she's like the greatest sort of exemplar from a book that I would like to be and like aspire to be like. And when I was reading it recently, I found that I was crying at even more parts of it than I normally do. Like there's a few bits, like when you have a favorite film, piece of music, and you're like, I'm going to get emotional at those bits. And I found myself getting emotional at more bits. But what's amazing for me about that story, and it's only quite a short story if anyone wants to read it. What's amazing for me is just the resonance it's had with me throughout my life and how it helps me, think about things. But actually, if you just look on paper at who I am and who this child is in the book, we've had very different lives. And yet there's some lessons there and some things it makes me think about and just resonates with me on the level of feelings as well. That is just incredibly powerful to me.
Yeah, wow. Can you tell us about the character and what is it that in her that you admire, or what is it that makes this story so significant for you?
Yeah. I'll sort of do the potty version and try to do it without spoiling the story, because there's some nice twists in the story that I think are really nice for people to discover. But yeah, no, I'd love to share briefly. I think for me, it's the fact that firstly, that she's not perfect. She's got a lot of excellent qualities, but she isn't perfect. But secondly, that, and this is, I think, something that's very important to me, she always shows up as distinctly herself, no matter what the external situation. And I think that's it. So, I love the poem If, and that line about meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostures just the same. She's got that attitude, which I think is particularly in a child is very, very interesting and sort of praiseworthy. And so as she suffers these trials and tribulations, I find that there's something uniquely her in every moment of that very short story. And she's also a wonderful person, but there's something in the way that she does that constantly reminds me, different things may happen, but what is the me that I want to bring to them? I think that's an important principle.
Useful. What is it why do you think it's affecting you now in that way? And I guess I have like personal experience of that. I don't know that I've interrogated it though. There are times when a particular story and a particular part of it, even one we know really well, touches us more. Why is it touching you more in this moment?
Oh, it's difficult to say. I think it's quite a period of growth in my life. Perhaps that's part of it. Also, I had some sad family news recently, So I think that might also be part of it. But I think for me, what was particularly lovely is that for some reason I thought that I'd already introduced a story to my wife. I told her about it because I remember it was in fact, this is random, but it was in a Guardian article once because they asked some people in the charity sector for World Book Day or something like that, what do you recommend? And I think some other people had some very worthy things, and I had a little princess which was worthy to me, but not on the sort of, I'm not sure they quite recommended Mandela or something, but something like that. So I think for me that, yeah, it's something about that time, but actually what it's led to is my wife's reading it now, and kind of I'm just so excited about her reading it. She's read a little bit and we've talked about it a bit, and there's something about, because she's the person who knows me most in the universe, I can't wait to see what she thinks of the book, but also whether she can see any of those reflections in my character. Or she might be, and I don't mind, she might be completely like, no way. You might want to aspire to be like that, but not quite yet. So that's an interesting.
Yeah, lovely. Lovely. Thanks for sharing, Alex. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing when we get to share something that means so much to us with people we care about. Yeah, yeah. Many people in my life have suffered through reading David Gemmell. Some have fallen in love, and some have thought, "What is Swale banging on about?" Alex, tell me. So there'll be a chance now. We're going to do that thing. We're already in it, right? Because there's the chance, the opportunity for insight. Because we stepped into this call, but we're going to do the thing that I haven't actually read the book, but when it came out, quite a few people in the community were talking about it. The Ultimate Coach. There's a great bit in there where he has an office, which the only place he coaches, and nothing but coaching happens in the office, and no coaching happens outside of it. So we're going to do this thing called where you step into the hallowed ground of coaching in that office, and we're going to do that now, right, together. There's going to be time for each of you to be coached in this call if you want to be. Alex, I'm curious. What can I coach you on today?
So I think for me, and maybe it partly, fits into the mood that we've already sort of alluded to on the call. And it also, as I'll go on to explain, fits into something from but we've discussed a little bit on previous calls. And it's about the passing of time. So for me, I've been thinking about how I can finish this year strong and what that means for me. And it feels like it's a combination of, listening to myself and having a rest, but also perhaps doing things in the way that I want without external pressure. And when I say external pressure, I just mean there's obviously an expectation. The holiday season is coming up and people will take time off. And I'm like, oh, I've got a few things I need to get done. So the relationship to something we've spoken about before, and I've brought to coaching as part of this group before, was about how I feel if I'm about to go on a trip and I feel that there's like a period of time that is kind of almost wasted, where it's almost a liminal space between I'm going to go somewhere and I've got something I'm going to do and I'm excited about it and I've got some things to finish, and I often feel very unproductive in that time. And partly I think it's because of expectations I place on myself or society might. And so just knowing that there's certain things in this sort of period, end of the year going into the next year for me when we're recording this, but I would just like to think about how I do that, how I grapple with that. That'd be really helpful for me.
Yeah. So tell me, what's the outcome that would be really useful for you?
I think for me, and one of the things that I like about these calls is that like basically I can take what I want from them. So like for me, it's often finding some better questions or getting to the heart of the matter, or giving me some sort of new things to think about that I can sort of take away and reflect on. So it's not that I'm in a situation where I feel like, oh, I've got absolutely no idea how I might do that. But it's a situation where I almost feel it's those incremental gains. Like if I can get slightly better at it this year and a bit better for next year and the year after that, it feels like something that's going to sort of pay back and keep giving. So I think some of the principles around it would be important for me to interrogate a bit.
Yeah. And if we were to get a little bit better at it this year, Like, you know, we get you those questions or areas to reflect on in this core, and then it moves forward. How is life different?
I think it really fits into, I've always been a person who wants to try to live life on my own terms. As you know, I've lived in different countries, I've been a freelancer, I've done a lot of things which allow my time to have a certain amount of freedom and flexibility, and that's been dialed up and dialed down. But I don't know about anyone else, including other people in this call who might be freelancers. But one thing I found is I still have that thing where a weekend feels like a distinct thing. And in some ways, I want that to be the case because, for example, the football's on and I want to follow it. And in some ways, that makes no sense to me at all. You know, I particularly notice with things like bank holidays, people will say, you know, what are you doing for the bank holiday? And I'll say, I didn't even realize there was a bank holiday, because that's not how it often works if you're a freelancer. So I think for me, it's adding into that sort of pick and choose element. I want to be able to say, you know, I might need some time and space, or I just want to, you know, chill out and stuff my face. But I want to do that again on my own terms, not feel, oh, somehow over this period, this is what is done, and therefore that's what I have to do. And I think there's probably a wider application and lesson in there as well.
Like, have you got a sense of that in this moment, the wider application and lesson?
I think it's just, I think it fits. It's kind of almost like, so the wider thing is how I want to live my life generally. And I'm sure I'm not unique in these values. A lot of people value freedom in their lives. And then the specific issue is the one I'm bringing. And then it sort of bounces back up to that level. If I can imagine it sort of bouncing between those things, and sort of understanding the specifics will help me understand the general perhaps a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Alex, you said it kind of connects to the conversation we were just having. Like, your words about the little princess keep coming back to me, right? She always shows up as distinctly herself, no matter the outside situation. There's a way in which it feels like that quality is it. And yet there's something that happens for you, you know, around the weekends, but also around Christmas is the one we're talking about, or this holiday period, where it's hard to do that in some way. Is that right? And of course, as always, if it's not right, that's even better, you know.
Yeah, I think in many ways it's right. Firstly, I sort of, I hadn't actually, really useful, I hadn't actually made the explicit link between the book and what I'm bringing to you, because before the call, I thought about what I might bring. And before the call, I certainly wasn't intending to mention the book, but maybe my subconscious brain made sort of some link between those things too. Yeah, that feels right. I think it's working, it's somehow working out. Where I feel like I actually do have the wiggle room in these things. So, for example, it is just true that if it's the case that a lot of people might not work as much over Christmas and New Year, that means that people I might want to contact about things, whether that's clients or collaborators or ideas or sharing things with people, if other people are taking that time, it can't necessarily just be that my actions will lead to the desired result, because other people might be taking time off. But what I think is, it's a wider question perhaps of, if you're a person like me who tries to live life on their own terms, but there are still a lot of things in the world which we just all have to do. And it's the interplay perhaps between both of those realities, or an aspiration perhaps with a reality would be a better way of putting it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to reflect on. One is just, this is like for all of us, when there's somebody we admire, real or fictional, someone we know or don't, this is an idea from Carl Jung as I understand it, to really admire a quality in somebody, we have to deeply understand that quality. And to deeply understand it, we have to have at the very least the potential for it in us. And I don't know if I don't know how, you know, how you all know Alex to different extents, but when he was talking about someone who has excellent qualities but shows up as human and not perfect, someone who always shows up as distinctly themselves no matter the outside situation, who's singularly them, it's hard not to see, for me, not to see how that is reflected in how you are, Alex, like that you do live those qualities. And then what I hear you saying is there's then the interaction with, right, like the rest of the world, You know, like you can do all those things that a little princess does. What's the name of the character? I think I've seen the movie a long time ago.
Yeah, so her name, I think it's pronounced Sarah or
Okay.
Sarah. I wasn't 100% sure because I'm reading it in the book. The movie,
Yeah.
it's not what's in my head, so I'm like,
Yeah, I think my sister loved the movie and so watched it a lot when we were little. Um, so Sarah or Sarah, like I imagine that she also has to deal with like reality and how to interact with that. And probably, I'm guessing, it's her courage in doing those, in living those qualities that is so admirable through the story, right? I don't know if that's true, but that feels like that's what it comes up for me. And then the other thing I just want to catch, which is a thing that you've said to me before, is I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's like a lot of the problems that we all run into is so wise. That's why I want to share it. Give it back to you. It's one of those annoying things. It's like, oh, shut up. You know, like, because it's your own words coming back to you. As people wave my books in my face. It's like, come on, guys. I don't want to do it 12 minutes at a time. But of course, that always solves my problems, always, including my untidy office. One of the things you said to me was a lot of our problems, like all of us, is because we interact with the world as we think it should be, not as it really is. So there's what's in my space in this. I'm wondering what comes up for you.
Yeah, I think the second thing is something I need to take away and reflect on. And again, like, you know, when we've spoken about that before, that was a really useful insight. But what I just wanted to share was like as you were talking, you kind of you made something present for me about the story that I hadn't thought of before, and I sort of got a bit of a tingle about it, which is that when you said that the way in which she deals with the situations, I was thinking how she's an amazing storyteller. And so partly she creates an imaginary world which enables her to cope with these situations, whether things are good or not. And what it really made me think is in terms of storytelling, it's something I aspire to get better at and to learn more about time over time. But for me, really here, what it's about is the stories I tell myself about my own life and what is true and what isn't. So rather than the stories she tells, which are often quite, you know, fantastical type stories. But I think for me, a lot of what I've learned is that I could tell myself the same about the same situation. I could tell an entirely different story, and I think often we all could. And so it's like, what stories am I telling myself, and what is that reinforcing in my mind? So just a simple one would be, I might be telling myself a story that many people are taking the time off over this time. But I mean, I know that to be untrue in all sorts of ways. You know, people are out there being creative. You know, people have jobs which mean they're even busier at Christmas, including sometimes members of my own family have done that. And so I think that actually a lot of it, what it goes back to is thinking about what's actually useful for the stories I'm telling myself about this. What do I actually want? What do I aspire to have? And then what is it that I could tell myself that would help me towards where I want to go?
Yeah. Just taking that amazing quality of Sarah or Sarah and like the imagination and applying it to these stories we have. And it's totally true. We have all these stories about how reality is. And until we slow down and we realize they're not true. The one that came up for me was I can imagine, knowing you, Alex, that there are a bunch of people for whom, yeah, getting like work done over Christmas sounds like terrible. But that actually hearing about a collaboration or getting to go for a coffee with you or a beer with you in Sheffield or whatever it might be would be a great message to get over the Christmas period. And a completely different feeling to, oh, I have to fill in that report or whatever it is that people are escaping. So where are we, Alex, in this moment with what you brought to this call?
I think for me, we're in the perfect place I wanted to get to, which is that it's given me some new insights. It's given me some things to think about more and take away. But in this case in particular, I think I'd like to read the story again, or read the relevant bits of the story again, which I think are pertinent to recreating the person I want to be. So I think that, you know, looking back at that through adult eyes, through my new understanding, through the age I'm at now, is going to be really, really helpful. And I think I think it will be a rich source of meaning and understanding for me moving forward. So that's just something I think I'll look forward to doing. Yeah, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, these stories, they're deep, right? The ones that touch people and spread out, they're usually not just a story about a little princess, right? Alex, if you had to you might have just said it might be that thing that you just said, but if you had to boil down like the conversation we just had to like one thing that stands out or feels most interesting or important, what stands out the most?
Reread the book.
Yeah, nice.
I think that's the thing for me, because it was reading it recently that prompted this. And I think it's very easy to kind of be, glib about, almost like, I hold this template. Okay, there's this book that was important to me, and there's this character that was important to me. When I went back to it, it made me feel that definitely it's still relevant to me. But then it's like, now what do I do with that information? And could I find other characters in other books or other people in the real world who exhibit qualities that I'd like to perhaps emulate a bit as well? Just interrogate it perhaps a bit more, without losing sight of the fact that I think it's a lovely story. I don't think that will happen, though. I think I'll still enjoy the story too.
Yeah, you've probably just sold like at least 4 copies of The Little Princess, the book. And yeah, it's like I love that what you said, without getting glib about it. There's, you could do this, because I did have that thought that it could be she could be a compass for you if you want her to be. Like, what would Sarah do? What would Sarah do in this moment? Right. And that can be a kind of glib thing and a useful glib thing, like a useful shorthand, but also if you really sit with it, I think that's what's, what I hear from you there is that like the texture of this story and this character, it could be what could be like a rich vein to be mined. Yeah, that's lovely.
Thank you.
Joey, what's something that you noticed from that conversation that I just had with Alex?
Why have I never read The Little Princess? I don't even think I've seen the film. It kind of vaguely, I mean, The Little Prince was but which is what I thought you were going to say. And that was because she always shows up as herself, no matter what is happening around her. I've written, I think you actually said, no matter outside situations or something. But that is actually what I'm noticing is, Alex, all the calls that we have done, and I've talked about being sure and steady, no matter whatever's going on around. Why have you never recommended that book? That's what I notice. I'm buying that book after this call today.
Love it. Thanks, Joey. Hazel, how about you? What's something you noticed from the call since we last spoke?
I'm noticing there's something around emotion and how stories have the power to touch us deeply. And this particular story obviously really resonates with Alex. And there was something you said earlier before you even mentioned the book, that when you asked the question, Robbie, why now? And you mentioned a point which I thought can be very true. Something happens in your life, and then when you read the story, you see new things becoming clearer. And it reminds me of the phrase, sometimes you need to hear the same thing said in different ways in order to get the meaning from it. And I think sometimes when we slow down instead of speeding up, and we sit with the story and the meaning and the emotions around it, what does it actually mean? I think that's when you can begin to unravel whatever it means for you, and what does that then mean going forward?
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Hazel. What can I coach you on today?
Maybe come back to me.
Okay. David, what's something you've noticed since we last spoke?
I thought it was really amazing how the conversation with Alex came full circle to the point that he apparently came up randomly, like, because he said he didn't come into this call with the intention to mention this book, and yet that kind of ended up being the key to the apparently unrelated, the insight that he needed.
Yeah.
And it came full circle back to that point. So that was, I mean, that's, I guess, the beauty of coaching, but that was just amazing to watch in real time.
Yeah, I'm really aware that that you know, you can't plan this kind of thing, and it's not that no thought went into what kind of piece of inspiration. You know, you've been on enough calls with me by now that I in different ways often bring some kind of piece of inspiration to kind of plant at the start of the call, partly just to begin to create the conversation, the connection, the insights. But it's not that it was without thought, but I couldn't possibly have predicted that what would come from Alex was this little princess picture, and the picture he gave of her. Yeah, and then here we go. It turns out to be the key. And yeah, how magical. I kind of feel that too.
And just the importance of listening, because you caught it. And I couldn't help imagining if it was me, I would have, that's a cute story now. What do you want to do for coaching? You know, and it's just so powerful to really pay attention to what they're saying, because it could be the key that they're offering you for what they need, you know.
Yeah, and look, like, it is like I definitely have my ears pricked for when someone describes the qualities of a person who they admire. Like, that is a thing that I particularly listen to. But I think, you know, for me, as soon as Alex starts to say, starts to talk about how important this is to him, you know, then I know, like, something interesting is happening already. Whether it might not have been related to the rest of the call at all, but as soon as that's happening, that's, you know, again, that's interesting. David, what can I coach you on today?
For me, it's something personal, family related. So I have 2 young children, and what I'd love to be able to do is be less reactive, or those moments when I can react. Now, I'm not the world's worst parent, probably, but like when I'm tired, when I'm stressed, there are moments when I find myself, even I catch myself in real time, but it's almost like you can't help the car crash. You know it's going to happen, something's going to drop, but you still can't help it. And I really would love to be better when those moments come, because those moments sometimes are the ones that count in terms of our relationship and what will matter to the child in years to come.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that. It's a really, you know, I can feel that that's an important thing. Some courage to kind of admit it, really noticing that. Just as a quick one, I think we've got 3 other parents on the call. Anyone else like found themselves reacting to their children sometimes and watching it from the outside? And just to say, David, like, 3 hands from 3 parents, so that's only all of us. And Alex Swallow, just ever had that with other important relationships where you find yourself, yeah, he's nodding, right? So it's like, again, not to say, not to in any way suggest this isn't significant for you, but just to hopefully give you that sense, like, it's part of the adventure. I mean, you know this more than I do, right? My girls are smaller than your children, but yeah. So David, so look, let's slow it down. Like, I can kind of guess this, but I don't want to. Why is it important to get into that together today?
It's important for 2 reasons, I suppose. One is the one I just mentioned, my awareness that, you know, I can be the nicest dad for, you know, 23 hours a day, but if I react in a way that upsets the child, that's the thing that they'll take away with them when they go to bed or when they remember the week or something like that. So somehow I feel it's not good enough. I need to work on that at least to see if I can bring it down to, not 1 hour a day, but how many more minutes can I bring into the good side of the ledger? The other reason is I think it's because of my self-awareness through the coaching, that to become a better coach, I do realize now I really need to work on myself, which is not something I signed up for when I went into coaching. I thought it was about helping other people. But both in terms of relating to my clients, but also to just live it from the inside, So I'm not commenting on their behavior in a way, but I need to be able to feel, and they need to be able to feel that I've lived it myself in terms of, being vulnerable, as you said at the beginning of the call, courage and honesty and vulnerability and all that. And I need to own it myself. So I've just become increasingly aware that I need to look at the places where I need to work on myself as a first step to being able to be any good to other people.
Yeah, look, I really believe that as well, that is an important part of this. If you get the more work we can do, the more service we can give, usually in different ways. So tell me, for us today in this call, what would you love to have by the end of the call that you don't have now?
I want to know what to do in those moments. It could be like a default behavior I can switch to. For example, it could just by walk out of the room. But I mean, maybe that wouldn't be a healthy response. But some other way of giving me time to defuse the internal switch, if or whatever the metaphor would be. But I need to somehow switch off that instinct to say something sarcastic or something, or to raise my voice, or to I need a healthier response, even if it's a temporary response, to buy time to switch gears into something that I'd be proud. I want to be proud. The next day I want to say, I nearly reacted then, but I didn't. I did this other thing instead. So that's what I'd love. Yeah, that would be the kind of test of it.
Love it. Well done. This might be a really hard question. To get to that place, what do you think we need to cover or address or resolve?
I haven't thought of that, but in real time, as you ask me it may be why I'm reacting in the first place. I don't know.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, it may be, related to what I just said, but it may not be the thing that I'm reacting to, but my state at that time. Like I mentioned, maybe I should just watch out for the hours between 8 and 10 p.m. That's my vulnerable time of the day or something, and just find a better way of planning that time and what I'm going to do with myself during that time to minimize the chances of something regretful happening.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, Robbie. That's a good question. I haven't really.
Well, we're always guessing at this in this moment, but let me just give it back to you just to see if there's anything else that we might need to cover. So one thing might be, why am I reacting in the first place? Another might be, is it about my state at the time? Like, I don't know if it was real. It could really be that it's 8 to 10 p.m. or if that was just a guess, but I can imagine that. It's like, yeah, in the pre-call report that you submitted, is it about, I think you said is it when I'm tired? That kind of thing. So there's that. Is there anything else that we might want to cover or address or resolve? That comes to mind in this moment.
I definitely know there's an overspill from, like, if I'm stressed or I feel under pressure from another part of my life, particularly work, finances. So, and that's where I can really regret if I react, because when in those instances, it really is about me and not about whatever my 6-year-old has said. And besides, it can never really be about what my 6-year-old has said. He's 6 years old, right? But I know that I'm aware that he can behave in the same way and say the same thing, all other things equal. But if I've come in from a great experience, I know I react in a better way, And I think it's because then I can focus on what the child is really saying to me, what the child really wants. And it may come out awkwardly in a way that I'm reacting to. But when I've got that fog in front of me, or that internal fog, I don't know how to describe it, then I'm not able to really decode what they're saying. I'm just, I'm almost interpreting it in the laziest and worst way possible, and I'm reacting to my laziness, or my tiredness or my stress. But
yeah, I would give you a little bit. I would be a bit more patient with you than you're being with yourself. I wouldn't call it laziness. I would go with those second ones, the tiredness, the stress. Let me just reflect back some version of what you've just said, just to see what lands about this, because one of the things we're interested in is, why is this happening? And one of the things you're saying, a pattern you've seen, is that it relates often to not what the child is actually saying. So you've stepped out from some other environment. Maybe it's stressful work situation, maybe it's finances, or I don't know, a stressful financial situation. And then what happens is, when the 6-year-old says something to you, you interpret that through this kind of fog, which is just great. I love it as an analogy. So there's this fog, and what happens is something goes into the fog, but when you see it on the other side, you get this kind of distorted version of it, which you interpret through the stress, in what you said, the laziest way possible, right? And what actually could be the response is to focus on what the child is really saying and what the child really wants. And if you hadn't come from that and you didn't have the fog, I think what you're saying is that's how you would love to respond.
yeah.
What do you notice as I play that back? Yeah, sorry.
I would love to respond that way anyway, but I would particularly love to respond that way because I know it's particularly difficult at that time. That's why I want to be proud of myself instead of, well, the word shame comes up. Sometimes if I react in a way, then I feel ashamed of myself because I know, it's a 6-year-old, it's an 8-year-old, what. So even though they may have misbehaved in a inverted commas, they've said something or done something that ordinarily they wouldn't, and kind of wouldn't by our normal standards. They're reacting obviously in a very human and childlike way. It's so difficult sometimes to. I know, I can say that logically now, but just in the moment, it's not always easy to keep those thoughts in mind. It's like I need to throw off something from myself first to get back to myself in order to get back to the normal, pure relationship. That interference, that fog, or that wrapping I have from whatever's occurring before.
So, I guess what I'm hearing in there potentially is the beginnings of, what is this thing that you do, temporary behavior or otherwise, that you talked about before, that is how you respond, so that you can look back proudly and say, I did that yesterday. And it sounds like there's some kind of practice to throw something off from yourself first, so that you can get back to that more pure relationship, and then you're able to, you know, be different in those situations. Is that right? Does that feel, how does that feel, that reflection?
It brings to mind one occasion where I kind of did it intuitively. Maybe I wasn't so tired and I had just enough energy to, but my son, I don't want to sound like I'm picking on my son only. I got an 8-year-old daughter too, but he's maybe because he's 6, it happens more with him. But he was kind of, I won't say be annoying, but I was annoyed with whatever he was doing. And he was kind of sulking and his head was on the ground and he just was refusing to kind of come out of his kind of little cave. And instead of telling him, which I would often do, or I would say something to him, which I might regret, I just bent down and joined him in the cave and put my head next to his. And then within about 10 seconds, he kind of melted and smiled at me. And it was like, whatever was up with him was kind of forgotten and he was fine. I kind of humbled myself because I really didn't want to do it. But for both of us, within like 20 seconds, it was like back to normal. But it's so difficult to remember to do those things. But I remember now that you said what you said, it occurs to me I did it once kind of intuitively.
Amazing. And I don't know if you saw it, but you watched back the video. We all, like your son, I think we all pretty much melted a little bit as you told that story. So we can all do the fingers thing. Some of you might have done it before. Have we done it, David, before? So just like everyone lace their fingers, right? And then unlace them, and then lace them again, and then unlace them, and lace them again, and then unlace them, and then just lace them one more time, but lace them the other way, right? So the other thumb is in front, right? This is a thing that I think I learned it from a guy called David Treleaven on a training course I did. That's like what we're trying to do every time. We're trying to change the way we've been practicing doing something for a long time, right? So it's like, that's how, like that on a big scale is what you had to do that time you lay down with your son. You know, often when we respond, you know, in the way that you're talking about, we react. It is a stress response. And it's a way we've practiced responding for a long time. Sometimes we learn it from our parents, you know, in all those ways that you're, on some level, I think, talking about being afraid of like planting those things now for your son. And so we've got to practice over time. And it gets then less weird to, if we practice enough, to lace our hands the other way. So I wanted to kind of plant that for you, because it's like, you can do it. And you've just described doing it. And each time you lace your hands the other way now, it'll feel a bit less goofy. And each time you practice, you know, lying down with your son, getting into his cave with him, and just inviting him out in the way that you did that time, it'll feel a little bit less hard and a little bit less goofy. That's my hypothesis for you. The other thing is, I just want you to remind you that those moments go in as well. And I know that's not the only one that you've ever had with either of your children, where you've stepped up with really beautiful, skillful, loving parenting. You know, they're a part of what builds us too. What are you noticing in this moment?
I'm noticing that maybe I need to, in the same way that memory occurred to me, maybe there are other memories, and maybe I can do a better job at catching those and knowing what works and just practice, you know, keep repeating them and getting better at them. And the second thing that comes up for me is it's not just about me. There's another human being involved. So I wonder if there's some way, like if my 6-year-old had a way of somehow communicating to me, hey, I know I'm shouting at you, Daddy, or I know I'm behaving in this way, but what I really want is X. So I just wonder, is there some way I can have a conversation with them, an ongoing conversation around in those moments that matter, when they feel a certain way, is there something, a default strategy they could adopt to tell me what they really need as well? you know, instead of just going to the cave, maybe, you know, there's something my child wants but doesn't feel able to express, and in those moments, what can I do for them? So yeah, maybe there's another part of the equation that I haven't really considered enough yet.
Yeah. I'm going to put one more kind of thing into the conversation because I think it's useful. Again, it's like teaching more than coaching. So I did some training a while ago and some investigation into what we call, what's it called? Polyvagal theory, which is a really kind of dull, complicated name for the way that we switch between what they call in that theory threat state and social engagement state. And apparently there's this one nerve, the vagus nerve, which essentially connects our face to all our major organs, and that can be in only one of those two states. When we're in one, we can't do the stuff that we would do if we were in the other. You know, it's a little like, I don't know how it's connected to fight and flight and all those things, but the reason I want to share it now is both for you and potentially for your son. I think there was a real, from what I understand of that, there's a real wisdom in what you said of a way to kind of throw off something from yourself first. You know, if I was an expert in polyvagal theory, I might be able to better, what do we say, like point you at that. What is actually, I'm just hypothesizing, what is actually happening there is you slip into threat state for some reason. And when we're in threat state, we can't socially engage. We can't learn. We can't really relate to others. And so what you might, the move you're talking about might be, how do you move from that state, from threat state, back into social engagement state? And again, I think probably, again, I've seen this with my girls, even though they're only 3 and 5 months old. Well, I've seen this with the 3-year-old, right? That she can switch really fast, but when she's seeing red, there's really no way of getting from her what she actually wants. And so I guess I'm gonna kind of plant that into this conversation too, for you to do what you will with now or later. David, what else? There's kind of lots of, it feels to me like there's various threads that have been moving around in our conversation. What else do you need from this conversation for it to feel complete? Or in other words, where might we go next?
No, I think I'm pretty complete now. I that vagus nerve thing that you just described sounds like that maybe that was what was happening with my son when he had gone down and he'd switched from one state to the other. And maybe that's an image I can work with, you know, because I can almost tell myself, it's not me, it's my body. It's my body switched into this state. So maybe I can be a little bit forgiving and give myself time or encourage the switching back into the state. So that's an image I hadn't really considered before. So, and it's actually just it feels healthy for me to share something that I've never shared before, actually.
Yeah. Well, if you've never shared it before, like, again, thank you for that courage and honesty and vulnerability. And I can hear various ways that you can work with this. And what I love about, we're doing one of the great moves of coaching here, right? David's challenged himself to understand the situation more. And when we understand it, we get that little bit more space to respond instead of react, is one of the distinctions people sometimes like. And it makes it that little bit more likely that next time you'll remember, oh, I could actually lace the fingers the other way. David, with all of what we've talked about today, what are the assignments or the actions that you're willing to commit to take this forward?
If I was someone who did journaling, I would say I would journal those times. I'm not very good at it, but maybe I'll engage my wife and ask her observations if there have been times, because I'm better in a conversation, and see if there's anything that comes out of that. Then I can identify any patterns or occurrences or time periods or states I'm in where this does happen. And then we can isolate what needs to be kind of addressed. So maybe I'll bring this up in a conversation with her.
Yeah. Beautiful. And great awareness to know that there are, you can kind of see what some people would do, but actually we want an assignment that actually works for you, that you'll actually do, right? Is there anything else? It doesn't have to be.
That's great. Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah. Lovely. Yeah. Hazel, what's something you noticed from my conversation with David? Or what's an insight you're taking from it?
I can totally relate to the topic. And when you shared this movement, I was doing it automatically after, because I think it really demonstrates how we get into the default of going one way and then we find it harder to go the other way, and how it requires practice to do that. And I was also reminded of just relationships in general. There's always someone somewhere that'll put us into that triggered, hijacked, whatever state you want to call it. And I think our children are our biggest teachers sometimes, or our partners, or whoever's closest to us. So I always see it as a training moment for us in how we want to show up in life. And then there was something around what David said around what's happening before. And I know you mentioned tiredness, but there was something around work, and you mentioned money. And I wondered if there was something worth probing there, because it's, you know, when you're so focused on something and then all of a sudden you're taken off that focus, what's happening in that moment before that is creating that, you know, it's like moving from one area of your life into another. So there's something around what's so important about money, work, that is kind of, I don't know, there's something around the chain reaction that's happening there.
Lovely. Thanks, Hazel. And I'm back with you. What's your intuition in this moment?
Well, I mean, for me, there was something, I mean, I shared before, Robbie, there was something definitely around, you know, children. I shared all possibly coaching around that topic, and relationships. And yeah, maybe there's something more to explore there, actually, in terms of work. Maybe that's a nice build on maybe what David was talking about, potentially.
Yeah. And always want to be really like, what do we say, like invitational, gentle, and respectful. Like we're kind of here, and this always happens in coaching, right? You know, we're all here, you're here. There is a kind of little pressure to talk about something now we're here, and there is a way in which this time is precious, right? And we, you know, it'll only come this once. And there was just like little hesitation in your voice at the start of that, so I just want to check in, like, you know, anything is perfect from this moment. But yeah, tell me, like, that sounds like there's a topic there for us. Like, what's your intuition? Shall we do some coaching on that?
Yeah, I think there's something around staying true to what I value. There's definitely something there around I guess it's different areas of the life, and it's for me it's I guess there's something about a clearer delineation between time. So I mean, Alex talked about time at the beginning. I talked about impatience. And then David talked about, you know, relationships. So it's time. And we all have the same time, right? And hopefully 7 to 8 hours of that time is spent sleeping, meaning we only have the remainder time in any given day. And so there's something around time and the value for me, you know, recognizing that time and what's important in that time, and being able to switch from one mode to the next, especially when I'm perhaps working from home.
And what makes it
Even
interesting?
in the office.
Even in the office as well, right? So not
Yeah,
just home.
even when it's away, but there's something that clear cutoff to say, that's it, work is finished. I'm going to switch off thinking about work no matter what. No matter what. And I'm not going to pick that device back up. I'm going to be so totally focused on my kids as they walk through the door.
And what is it that makes, I mean, I can guess, but what is it that makes that an important thing for us to do work on today?
It goes back to, you know, for me, that's a vital part of who I am. And I imagine everyone else, you know, relationships are key. And family in particular, I'm very aware that sometimes perhaps my worst side can come out at times, especially when I'm sleep deprived, or I have a deadline, or, you know, something else has happened that I would like more time to spend on work in that day. And I'm not able to because my kids come home from school or I need to pick them up.
Yeah. So let's do the contracting, the right sizing for this call. What's the outcome from this call that would be really useful for you?
Oh, a part of me wants to say to be more strict on my time. But there's something about also spontaneity and flexibility. So I think it's finding more of that balance and being okay with that.
So at the end of the call, what might you have that you don't have now?
I think it's been more totally present when my kids come home.
And I'm gonna mess a little bit because when do your kids come home? Like they might be coming home at like exactly 5, but I'm guessing that we're not like. Is that when they come home? Like, is our task then to get you present by the end of the call so you can be present with them when you come home? Or is it that there's something you want to have that will help you do that on a regular basis, something like that?
Yeah, there's something I want to have that'll help me do that on a regular basis. And maybe it's not, there's something about when they come through the door, because I personally think that's important to welcome them. It's a bit like, dare I say it, it's a bit like a dog. You know, when you come home, we don't have a dog, but there's something about a dog, unconditional love. And when that dog, you know, comes to you, you're like, oh my God, you know, this is amazing.
Yeah, well, I love it because I have no judgment on dogs. I've never had a dog, so I don't know what that's like. I've just had kind of cats that would come and, you know, scratch my legs unpleasantly when I came in, but also like rub themselves against your leg, and it's a different kind of love, really. But so let me check. I've got it. What you'd love to have by the end of the call, something, we don't know what it is yet, that will help you be present with your kids more, but particularly in that moment where they come back through the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And having some quality time, making sure I have quality time, which is focused on them.
Yeah, nice. And what's your intuition about what it is that's stopping you doing that we need to cover or address or resolve?
Work.
Yeah.
I'm laughing. Yeah, I just get so like zoned in to maybe doing something and I'm just like, oh, if only I had a little more time, I would be able to, you know, complete it. And it's not always, it's only sometimes, but in these moments, I just wish that I was able to expand time so I could finish, be present, you know, complete.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else sometimes wish they could expand time to conjure up? No, Joey's saying no, but I think she's being sarcastic. Okay, Hazel. So there's this. Let's just catch it. There's this one thing that might be the only thing we need to cover. the only thing that's stopping you being present when your kids come home, and also being able to carve out that quality time for them. But is there anything else that we might need to cover in this call to help you with that?
No, I don't think so.
No, that's it. Right, nice. And just to catch it, like I made a little joke about it then, or I guess it was just inviting that kind of shared humanity, that this like frustration that there isn't more time. But you have, you know, you've mentioned it several times in this call already. It's clearly there. One of the things is this sense that when like, let me just play it back to you and see if this is right. That one of the ways the system works is that you love your work, and sometimes you're really in it and you're working on something and it's really important and you're not quite finished yet. And then the kids come home. And then even if you get up to go to them, you're more like the kind of the more angry of my cat's on its worst day when they come in through the door than you are like the dog metaphor that you want, which because really there's this sense they're kind of imposing on the work time that you just wish you had 30 more minutes, an hour, 2 more hours, another day to work on. But instead, they're home and it's kind of getting in the way. And then you have the situation that doesn't line up with who you'd love to be, which is the mythical dog. Like, what do you notice as I play that back to you?
I'm laughing because, yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. I mean, like the cool thing about that, Hazel, is like it's almost all, maybe it's all to do with you. And that's like great, because that's actually something that me and you can do something about together. In a coaching.
Well, it is all about me.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So, yeah, what's part of this, or like, what's interesting to you about what I've just played back?
Well, it's me, and as you said, the great thing is I can play with different things to experiment, I guess. And I think there's something about, you know, being able to pause and almost I don't know, it's almost disengaged from it for even if it's like a few minutes. So disengage that focus to be able to come back to it. And Robbie, I have to say this, the battery on my laptop's about to go, so I'm just going to quickly get the power cable.
I love it. I always love this stuff. You get the power cable, Hazel. Like, we're going to just sit with this. It's like, I love it when this happens, because, you know, people, you guys who have been on the calls before, you know this, like, what is this message from the universe, right? But like, while we're slowed down, Alex, what have you like, what's an insight or something you've noticed since we spoke? So like, just what are you present to in this moment?
I think for me, it's around, I mean, it's partly like with the noticing about the power cable, is that one thing that I wouldn't really be able to describe to other people. And so perhaps, you know, people watching this will be able to see it, is that there's a particular energy about each call that is partly about the different people on the call for the particular coach's journey to call, but it's also a weird interplay between the things we bring, the thing you give us for inspiration, whatever's going on in our lives at that point. And it's always different. So, you know, there's been calls where it's felt really joyous, really emotional, quite heavy, quite light. But I think there's something about us in community that there's a like almost like a collective mood sometimes, or a collective presence, guiding spirit. I don't know what it is, that I find just really fascinating, and I've noticed it here today.
Yeah, lovely. Hazel, I'm going to come back to you in a sec. Joey, what about you? What's something you've noticed since on the call since we last spoke, which is quite a while ago now?
I'm assuming you said Joey, you glitched.
Yeah. Yes, I did say Joey.
Something that I've noticed. Actually, there's something I'd quite like to share. It's very succinct. I think I stole it from, it's kind of a reworked version that I do myself from Insight Seminars. David, you might, well, everyone might find this useful, but David, when you were talking, I remembered this is something that I put into practice, especially during my daughter's teenage years. it's 3 steps, and it's right now I am noticing is the first step. And the second step is my highest intention is. And you've got to have done some work to know what that is. But yeah, it just says it all, doesn't it? My highest intention is with your son, say, or with your kids, you know, maybe I'm coming. But it's that, like, adjusting into that sense in the step 2. And then step 3 is what you're going to do next. I can't remember the exact wording, but for me, it was always like, okay, I'm going to do one thing. And sometimes, actually quite regularly, it was more just take a breath, breathe for a moment, and just really remember what number 2 is.
Yeah.
And then make a choice. It's I choose to, that's the wording, choose to. So right now, I'm noticing my highest intention is, and I choose to. And as you practice it, it's a bit like this. You kind of can get used to it, and you can do it in a split second. You can kind of shift. You can also shift in a split second back again, obviously. But you can do those steps that I find really useful in lots of situations, and it stretches out the stimulus response, the kind of the space in between.
Lovely. Thanks, Joey. Hazel. I'm always interested whenever like someone gets a text or the cable goes off and it like interrupts the coaching in some way. I'm always interested in that. And so I don't know, for you, like it could be what like, why was it perfect that we got interrupted? Maybe this is it. Why was it perfect that we got interrupted there?
Well, my daughter had actually just come through the door, so I think it was probably perfect timing.
And what did you like? How was it? What happened?
So I ran down the stairs and I simply said hi to my daughter, and then ran back up the stairs. Yeah, but I just wanted to pick up on something that
wait. Sorry, Hazel, I'm gonna interrupt you. I know interrupting is bad form in coaching, but I want to slow down on this. Like, when you like, were you how close to the dog were you in that moment?
Well, I was definitely running.
Yeah.
Maybe not running in her direction, but I was running towards the cable. You know, I was running back up the stairs. So I caught her eye, said, hi, Isla, you know, how are you doing? And then ran up again.
Yeah. And like, because it's, I mean, this is amazing, right? Like, why is it perfect? It's like, we just had an opportunity live in the call for you to practice welcoming Isla when she got home, right? And not only that, but you could have been full of resentment that the power cable was running out at the wrong time. There could have been a sense of something about her there, and it doesn't sound like there was. I'm just curious to slow down in this moment, like, and then I'll let you talk about what you want to talk about. But like, if we slow down a little bit more in this moment on this experience, and just for everybody, I'm always, whenever there's a chance to actually do the work in a session with a client instead of talking about the work, it's like always a temptation to grab it. And I think we just got a little bit of that now. Like, what have you, like, what can you take away from this experience just now of seeing Isla that's useful for us in this work that we're doing?
Well, the reason I was laughing was because when Joey shared the 3 things, you know, my highest intention is always to be, you know, the best it can be in that moment. You know, so it'd be an amazing mum or whatever it is. And so the fact I said a dog, I was just like, well, what does a dog do? It just wags its tail. And there's something about, you know, the number of people I've heard saying, oh, dogs are amazing because, you know, you stroke them, but they don't have any resentment. They don't hold grudges or what. That's what I've been told anyway. And it's almost like they just reset every single day. Like they have this amazing ability to reset. So there was something about becoming a dog. And I was laughing because it was my daughter. And I think there's something about, you know, whoever comes through the door, whether it's my son, my husband, because it's the same principle, right? Because you know, it's what feelings I leave that person with, and I'm very conscious of that. Whoever I come into contact with is what's the feeling I leave them after I've had that interaction. And I think, David, when you said in that moment, like you just went down to your son, I saw that at school, this woman, just a screaming toddler, and within seconds they calmed down because she simply went over and gave them the biggest hug ever. And this kid was throwing a complete tantrum, meltdown. And the teacher just went over and gave a massive hug because she knew that was a way to calm them down. There was no talking. It was just, I'm going to hug this child to calm. And I was just watching in awe going, oh my God, that kid just calmed down so quickly. So there's something about, you know, when you just bring that pure love, you're able to do that. So if what David was saying, the pure love, you're able to do that in the moment. Whereas if you don't have that, you're not able to give that. You can't give what you don't have yourself.
You can't give what you don't have yourself.
Mm.
One of the things as you were talking then that I was noticing, right, you gave this amazing list of what does the dog do? And I love how we've got this, like, we've had a little princess and now we've got the dog as part of the call. The dog just wags its tail, you said. It was this really beautiful thing you said. It just wags its tail. And then you proceeded to explain how it does not just wag its tail, right? It has no resentment and no grudges. It resets. And it's about the feeling that the dog leaves the person with. Pure love. And what I love also about this story you just gave is it does sound quite like a dog, because my experience of dogs is they don't hang around you necessarily. Some of them do. But when you come into the house, they run up to you, or I'm out for a walk, right? These dogs run up to me, they say hi, and then I mostly get a bit annoyed with them because they're not my dog and I'm trying to have a nice walk, and then they run off, right? But if it's your dog and it comes to greet you when you get home, it comes, it says hi with pure love, with no grudges, no resentment, reset, wags its tail, and then runs back upstairs to plug its cable in and get back to the coaching call. What else do you need from this call, Hazel, for it to be complete?
I just need to become more like a dog.
Yeah. You said a few minutes ago that you might want like a few ways to experiment, but like, is that just the one?
Yeah,
Or do
I'll
you
take
need
that one.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want a dog. They're desperate for a dog. So maybe I need to become more like a dog.
Well, or you could get the dog and then just delegate all this to the dog, right? And then you can just carry on doing your important piece of work and you never have to see your children. So let me just slow it down. You had two questions for this piece of coaching. One was about be more present when they come through the door. And we've got a kind of, what do we say, like a way, something to help you do that. We might want to get into a bit more of that, or it might feel like enough. There's also a thing about, and make sure to have quality time with them. So again, it may feel different now. I don't have any attachment to doing all of those things. Like if your intuition is that we're done for today and that's perfect, then trust that. But I just want to check in if there's anything else on either of those things before we do that.
That's enough. I'm happy with that because I'm a firm believer in one thing, experiment.
Fantastic. And can you make a specific action for us or assignment? Even if it's just
as soon as I hear that key in the door, I become the dog.
Yeah. So that's the practice is. The practice is hear the key, become the dog.
Yeah.
And look, and this might be from me, but it's like one of the things from that story, again, to me, it just really feels true, is like, as the dog, permission to once you've greeted them, go back to work. Like, if you want to. But when the key turns, it's such a great assignment. The key turns, become the dog.
Yeah. And I just want to say out to any viewers out there, if you want to be mean about me becoming a dog, seriously, yeah, you need to take a look at yourself. Because there's something about, you only make these comments because you're not happy yourself. I totally believe that. So
yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to the comments about the dog bit. That's one of my favorite things. But it's like, yeah, let's hold that. Love it. I love that energy there, Hazel, as well. Thank you. Joey. Yeah, what's something, maybe there's nothing because we spoke to you quite recently, but what's something that you're noticing in this moment?
Nothing really comes to mind.
Nice.
I've enjoyed the coaching so far and learning about everyone and little insights.
Yeah. And then tell me, there's this little I'm aware there's this little pressure now because we've got some time, and there's a space for you if you want it, but there's really no pressure. Like we're always in these calls, we're in service, right? So, but we're here. How might I be able to support you today?
I really want to tell everyone that there's been a whacker outside, making a horrendous noise on the floor. And the fact that I have just, as it goes, come last, and I've been kind of praying to the life force of the universe, please could the whacker be done and finished by the time it's my turn, or I won't be able to go. And it just went away on the back of a little, but almost like a golf cart they've got here. It just went off around the corner. I saw its little yellow bottom disappearing behind the grass as you came to me. I was
I love it. And just by a whacker, you mean like some kind of piece of machinery that is whacking stuff, right?
Yeah, that works like this.
Okay, yeah.
And I could feel it in the caravan. It was really, this is never going to work. I can't record sound.
And then there we go. Just like the little princess showing up in Alex's mind, or the Isla coming in through the door just as the cable ran out of battery. The whacker has gone away just in time for us to do some work. So tell me, what's the job we're here to do today, Joey?
Well, what I put in my report, really, and I'm really aware, and actually I use a similar form in my own coaching. Your 4 hour courage, vulnerability, honesty, and leadership. And it's different. So when you're a thinker or a coachee or a client, that's kind of all right. And usually not quite in this moment. It's very private anyway. So it's totally doable, and it's great for exploration. So I guess what I'm thinking about is, as a coach, how much do you do that? In a therapeutic world, the school of thought is you don't share about your own stuff or anything, even if you're married or have kids or anything. And as a coach, some of those stories are really, really valuable, or in my experience have been on both, either when I'm being coached or I am a coach. So I really value that. But I think I'm really interested at the moment because I have quite a lot of strong, different, what did you call them earlier on with the little princess outside situations at play. And I have everyone who, not people who are listening to this call who haven't been on them, but I'm always working on sure and steady, kind of no matter what's happening. And it was so interesting that's what you said today, Alex, wherever it is. She always shows up as herself, no matter those outside circumstances. And it's how you do that, I guess, as a pro, being professional, being coming to it or with integrity, with sure and steady. And then where's the tipping into oversharing or losing credibility because you're in a personal situation that might involve outside judgments, and how to kind of step into that. I guess it's a bit like step 2, and what is your highest intention? How to in one situation, so with my daughter, it was always utter complete love, and just to remember that's my highest intention, that she feels that, a little like you were talking about, Hazel, which was lovely. But that's one situation where I've worked out the highest intention. It's clear, it's obvious, it's really easy, if you like, to step into it, even in rage sometimes, because of who she is, because of, you know, in relation to you. But in a coaching conversation, and also now in a more, I think it's now okay to say on this call, isn't it? You know, I'm in the presenters team of the podcast. Robbie, you're going to be interviewing me as well, and possible future people who I will coach or will know. But there's something in this. How do I be authentic? I guess is the word, isn't it? Integrity, truthful, but also professional, good at my job, and it not overlap, but be able to somehow interlink or integrate the two healthily, in a healthy way. That's helpful as well.
Yeah. And so if we do work on that today, how will we know we've succeeded at the end of the call?
I'll be able to shift into that mode. I'll have a better sense, and I'll have a better sense of what I feel like when I'm in that, when that part of me is in charge or is in the lead.
And if you have that better sense of what you're like when that part of you is in the lead, how will things be different?
I'll be more confident about it outside of my coaching calls. When I am a coach, I'm actually, amazingly enough, it's really wonderful. It's a really wonderful practice for me, coaching. It's really good for me. It's not just good for the, I'm really interested in this idea of, I think you know this, Robbie, I think we talked about this actually, the idea of this is for the advantage of me, and then for all of those around me in like a circle. I'd love to be able to draw this. I don't know how to. And then all those people in that circle, and to the advantage of all of them around them. And so it kind of ripples out. And definitely coaching, there's some kind of interplay between the coach and the coachee. I step into sure and steady for real. Like it really somehow it flows, it falls into place. But I don't have the confidence that's going to happen until I go, hello, my lovely, whoever I'm speaking with, and we go. It's like I'm at the moment, I don't anyway. I have done in the past, but I'm in a particularly stressful, really strong, difficult situation outside of coaching, and I'm expanding my practice, and I don't want the stress of thinking, oh, what if I say this? Oh, what if I cry there? Or what if I'm, it's, I don't know, it's a, what did you ask me? What would I have? It's about, yeah, it's a confidence, I guess, that I'll approach it as a healthy, in healthy adult mode, if we're looking at TA models, in healthy adult mode.
Let me just check. I've got it. So first, well, like, let's just do it. So the clear thing that I just heard is you want to have a better sense of what it feels like when you're in, I guess, healthy adult mode, when that part of you is leading, so that you can do it outside of coaching calls. Or have more confidence to be able to do it.
And I can have the confidence that I'm going to do that inside all my coaching calls. And that, because until you experience what coaching is like inside it, I don't know if that's what I'm trying to say really, but until you're inside of that kind of zone, I don't know, that's that lovely comfortable bubble of where there's that space that we hold. It's difficult for me not to be, we talked actually on the last group call, buffeted by all the other stuff. Here, I'm somehow, it's like a big protective membrane somehow, and in these calls, but and in that sphere of coaching, but I don't find that really in other places, and therefore I forget and I don't have the confidence before I go in. So the idea, I'm doing the invitations challenge at the moment. I've I have my coaching slots every week where I'm coaching, but I really want to expand that. So I'm inviting more people into coaching, but I don't have the confidence I have in my calls when I'm inviting people in, and I don't really get why that is. And I think it's because I feel quite fraudulent, because I think, oh, my personal life's upside down. How can I coach?
Quite a lot here, Joey. I'm noticing that. I'm just curious, like, yeah, we're in this place where there's this sense of you being in a protective membrane now, also in your coaching calls. And then there's this question of confidence. So what do we cover? How do we do this work? How do we get you to that place where you have a better sense of what it feels like when that part of you is in charge by the end of the call? Why are you laughing?
Because you're making me do all the work. I want you to tell me.
Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it? It's that annoying
really
coaching thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm noticing the membrane isn't quite as that there's a few little holes and ripples in it, because I'm very aware we're being recorded this time. That is different. And there's a weird kind of parallel, isn't there, that I'm bringing this and it's being recorded, so I'm also doing this in a public way.
Yeah, like so.
It's like good practice.
Oh, sorry, Joey, I spoke over you there, and I missed something you said.
I thought it might be good practice.
Right, like there's a part of me I noticed then, this is just for everybody, right? This is what's going on back kind of behind the curtain. A part of me started to panic then. It was like, ah, no, we're on this call. Maybe it'll hold Joey and I back from doing the work that really matters here. And then another part of me caught it, especially given what's happened in this call. What if instead we choose to look at this as though this is like the perfect way to do this work? Something about the fact that we may be watched makes it perfect for us to have this conversation now, Joey. And then that's what you said, right? Like maybe it's part of the work is happening now. So then let's slow it down. Like, yeah, all of that is happening. So it's made. Well, let's check it. Because of that, and you kind of mentioned it at the start of the call, it's like the part of your brain is on the fact that this is a recording. What is the impact of that on the membrane, or what's happening? Why is it less today than it sometimes is in a coaching session?
Well, there's lots of layers, I guess, to what people might think. I might not get comments about me being a dog, but who knows what perception there might be of future people I come into contact with. But also, I guess there's something in that people having confidence in me to be able to support and help them. What was the actual question, Robbie?
Not actually sure I can remember.
Oh, we can't. Not yet. I think it was something along the lines of, what is it that I'm afraid of? Was it something like that?
Like, let's just trust that. That sounds like a great question. I don't think it was that, but like, what is it that you're afraid of, Joe?
Yeah, that I think it's that they're not having confidence in my sure and steady when I feel I am being buffeted, because of course it's all down to our perceptions. And somebody said something brilliant about stories. What stories am I telling myself, and what is that reinforcing? Thank you again, Alex. Yeah, and there's lots of stories going on outside of when I am wholly present, and I cannot be wholly present as I am in the sphere of coaching all the time in all my life. I can't do that. And if I don't coach people locally, all my coaching's on the phone. But if I coach someone local, then I bump into them, and I'm a bit difficult to mess, or whatever it is. Or I'm not Joey the coach in the veg shop. Somehow does that damage my professionalism, or really sure.
So there's a couple of things coming up for me, Joey. I'm just going to play with them because they're what's present. One is I heard a story of a coach working with another coach, and he went for like enrollment call, and he was expecting a kind of, I'm going to keep the names out because, you know, he was expecting a kind of like the coach he wanted to hire to be like really on, expecting the kind of like prosperous coach. I'm going to serve you as hard as possible. And the coach was just had a chat with him. And he was a bit, the client was a bit caught out because it's like, well, I was expecting this other thing. And that caused a bit of a problem. But when he slowed down with it, it's like, oh, that was actually really nice. Like maybe we want to do that as well, but we get to just connect as people. That's like one piece like that I wanted to put in. The other one I once we've talked about, so I'm not going to do it because again we're being recorded. It's like this is interesting stuff, isn't it? Oh, I can catch myself doing it as well. I once met a musician and spoke to him, who I really admire and respect, like who I had loved.
Was
like
it Frank?
Yeah, so I spoke to Frank Turner once, and it broke the spell. And because he's a normal guy when he's not on stage, and yet when he's on stage in front of 15,000 people, he's doing something different. His professional self is on. He's channeling something, and it's unfair. One of the things I realized is it's unfair to expect that man to be doing that thing all the time. It doesn't take anything away from what he does professionally, and from the magic of the collective experience of 15,000 people and those songs and those musicians. And part of the reason I realized that is because I was once complaining about something over lunch with some friends of mine, and Anna, my friend, said, you know, it's just really funny to have been reading your book and then come and speak to the like actual you, because you get that different feel. And I had a lot more sympathy for Frank when I had that reflection, because it's like, it's not that anything that I believed was different between me over lunch and me in writing in 12-minute method book, whatever. It's just that like my professional self is on when I'm writing. And it's not just a membrane for me. It's a kind of, it is that question you asked. It's like, how much am I in my highest intention in the moment? And, you know, how much am I the highest version of myself and how much not? And it's okay to not be that all the time would be my reflection personally. So that's not the most well-formed of story, but I'm curious, just that's what came up for me. What are you noticing in this moment?
What really stood out for me is your friend saying your actual self. Because my actual self is not an unraveled mess. That's just one part of me sometimes in response to trying to deal with external situations and circumstances. My actual self is that, and you know, what part of me is in leadership when I'm coaching, what part of me is in leadership when I'm making some food, whatever, you know, the different parts, who you are at a dinner and who you are on stage. I will be singing on Saturday, you know, who I am there is someone different, but it's also my actual self. And I think that's something I'm really learning in this, actually, that could be really important here, is that all of those parts are little princess. She always shows up as herself. They are all myself. I mean, this goes for all of us humans, I guess, doesn't it? We all have these multiple parts at play, moving and emerging and evolving and, you know, interacting all the time. Some parts we are not so fond of, and some parts we're really proud of, and some parts we really enjoy. So in terms of really, sorry to sound really coachy, but really stepping into a professional coach mode in a confident way might just be to remember what I just said. That actually, if you're in really difficult circumstances, you're a human being and you have to experience those other parts that struggle or unravel in order to be able to coach, because you have to have had all of those experiences. You have to be a human being. You have to be a human being to be a really good coach. And being a human being is to quote somebody we all might know, messy and out, isn't it? Messy and out. So maybe being a coach, it's okay to be messy and out, because part of that is to be in professional coach, wholesome, steady, sure and steady mode on your coaching calls, and maybe not in every other area of your life. And that's okay. It's honest. It's honest. And enables you to have understanding and empathy and presence, really understanding, like with all of your stories today, especially David's story today. I really can relate because of the experiences I've had as a parent. So thanks. I think I just did that work. Thank you very much.
I was just going to ask Joey, where are we with the question you brought, with the topic you brought? Are we done?
I think so. I think talking it out is good, actually, with other coaches. It's really useful.
That's a relief, isn't it? Because that's pretty much the only tool we've got as coaches.
Oh wow, Hazel's completely disappeared now.
Yeah, it wasn't the yeah. It's yeah. We're recording in the winter, and so the light's definitely gone down in the UK since we started. So Joey, let's just slow it down just for a moment. So like, you can go back to the recording, right? You can watch this, you can capture it in any ways you want. But if you in this moment could boil down this, like the key insight or the thing that stands out most from this piece of coaching we've just done, what is it?
And not just me, but I am a human being with multiple moving parts, foibles and confidence, and mess and togetherness. And that is all part of being sure and steady, I guess.
And is there, like, what's the action or assignment that takes that out into the world with you and helps you as life goes on?
I'm going to listen back to what I said in that last piece. I'm going to read The Little Princess. I read a book called Momo recently for a similar reason. I can recommend. It's an easy read and it's lovely. And it's also about a girl just being herself. Another children's story. And maybe the practice, going back to this, the practice of remembering that it's okay to be, I'm not being fraudulent. Right, another coach I was speaking with yesterday, he said the word fraudulent in his own situation. It's not being fraudulent when you coach, to be a really wonderful professional presence on the end of the phone for somebody. Just because 2 hours ago you were crying about something, that doesn't mean that you're fraudulent. It means that you're professional.
Great work, Joey. The thing that
Wait, I thought about it. Yeah.
Just the thing that reminded me of is I just interviewed Ruth Saville, who some or all of you know, for the Coach's Journey podcast, and she told this story about like the first time she came across coaching was in like an advert in a shop window in Otley in West Yorkshire in like the early noughties, and you know, she had that the view of coaching which many people have who don't know what this kind of coaching is like, which is, you know, essentially her response was, well, how can somebody whose business operates out of this, I don't know, hypnotherapist's office in Otley know anything about how I should be living my life? Like, this life coaching thing sounds nonsensical. And if you think that coaching is only what it looks like, I don't know, a tennis coach does, because a tennis coach, you know, the people coaching, I don't know, I'm out of date on tennis, Raducanu or Murray or whoever it is, they do know about tennis, right? But you don't have to. know about the things that our clients are going through. It can be useful. You just have to be there. And you have to be that loving presence that Joey was talking about. And you have to be a human with them, be a professional, and then some magic happens. So thanks, Joey. So team, we're almost at time. What we'll do to check out is we'll just check out with one thing that stands out for each of you from this coaching call. And I can nominate people if you want, but if somebody has one and they want to go first, then let's do that, and then we'll go around my screen. Alex.
I think for me, it's just, yet again, on these calls, it's reminded that I'm grateful to have these sort of conversations. So I think probably before I came to coaching, both being a coach, having a coach, being part of a coaching community, I would say that it was rarer that I had these type of conversations, and I presume it's true for other people as well. And so there's something in the sort of shared humanity of when people are discussing things, that there's so many times on calls, people are nodding their heads or feeling each other's pain or that sort of, and there's a real privilege in that. And I think that extends to one-to-one coaching as well, where quite often the client will be talking about something that there'll at least be something that has some resonance. And this is all about being human beings. And so I'm just grateful to be able to be part of conversations like this.
Lovely. Thanks, Alex. David, how about you? What stands out for you from this call?
What stood out? So many things, but the one in my mind right now is where Joey said, my life is upside down, so how can I coach, or something like that, she said. And I thought, anyone watching this video back, that might be exactly why they would choose you as their coach. It's because you knew this was being recorded, you know it's going to be public, and you still had almost the audacity to say something as vulnerable as that. And you were the one who used the word authenticity, which I'm not sure that had come up until that point, but certainly you mentioned it several times. And I think that authenticity is it's kind of a word that we bandy around sometimes, but when you see it in action like that, and the vulnerability involved in that, it's very powerful. So I just thought that is exactly why they would choose you, probably, if they come to this video looking for a coach.
Yeah, it's glorious, isn't it, to watch people in that stuff. Yeah, thank you, David. Hazel, what stands out for you from this call? You're on mute. I don't want to miss this golden moment. There's amazing things you're going to say.
So I am. Maybe that's a sign.
Maybe. What? What's it a sign for?
Maybe I don't need to say anything. I actually was going to say, speak your truth. So there's something around stories, and there's something around what are the stories we tell ourselves. And there's something around imperfect human beings, and we can only be our best in that given moment, depending on so many factors. So for me, it's a daily practice, like anything else.
Lovely. Thanks, Hazel. Joey, how about you? What stands out most from this call for you?
What stands out most? Something about full of love. I think there was the way Alex, the way you speak of your wife as well, and the way you're reading the book together, and what you were looking at about finishing the year strong, and the two of you. Sorry, I'm looking down because it's Hazel and David. You're on the bottom row, and it was full of love for your children and in parenting. There is something, Robbie, then you said about holding a space with love or something for the people that we're working with. And yeah, it's a bit of it can be a bit of a cheesy word, a bit like authenticity, David. But there's something full of love about our practice and our craft, but also about these calls, no matter who's on them. And they do change every month. I don't think we've ever had one with all the same people on. Well, not quite anyway, maybe a couple of times. But there's a thread of that all the way through.
Yeah, and you said it as well, Joey, right? You connected to that when you talked about your highest intention with your daughter being, I couldn't find it in my notes, but I think you said complete love, or what did it used to be?
Utter love.
Utter love. Yeah. Yeah. We could do, you know, it feels like a cheat move on the answer to that question, doesn't it? My highest intention is, if it's always utter love, like that, life would be pretty good. I think that would be a good high self. Well, thank you, Alex, Joey, Hazel, and David. Thank you all for the, like, as David said, like it's true of Joey and it stood out, but it was true of all of you, the audacity to show up to something ridiculous like this that I asked of you. I'm very grateful, and on behalf of me, but more than that, on behalf of people that might be watching, for your courage and honesty and vulnerability and leadership. It's been such a pleasure to have you here. I'm really looking forward to the dog comments on YouTube, and yeah, thanks to everybody who's been watching or listening. You can find links to Alex and Joey and Hazel and David's work in the comments, or not in the comments, in the description, and links to the Coach's Journey and many more things. But most of all, thanks everybody for being here, and wishing you all a wonderful rest of the day.